My infirmity, suffering well. Lamentations is a small book full of grief, mourning, and shame, on a level few of us can comprehend. Lamentations 1:12. The first four of the 5 chapters are elaborate acrostic poems. Chapters 1, 2, and 4 each have 22 verses, one for each Hebrew letter. The third chapter has 66 verses, 3 per letter. Though the verse sequence in chapter 1 follows the Hebrew alphabet, the Ayin, letter 16, and Pei, letter 17, are out of sequence for the rest of the poem. This is striking and easily overlooked. God is evidently inviting us to pay attention and ponder, offering us a clue into the dynamics of evil and suffering, Matthew 7:7. Perhaps this is even an open invitation to tackle the most obvious and difficult question triggered by unjust suffering. Why? If God is love, 1 John 4:8, why doesn't he prevent evil? Most of us seem to think we already know the answer. How can a good God possibly allow so much cruelty and injustice in the world? Some conclude there is no God, or decide he isn't good. But Jeremiah doesn't ask why at all, anywhere in the book. And this is also significant. Instead, he freely admits Israel is being punished for her sins. Chapter 1, verse 18. He is grounding his grief in the ultimate goodness and justice of God. Chapter 3, verse 39. This may be key to the misorientation of the letters Ayin and Pei in chapters 2 through 4. Ayin comes from an ancient pictograph resembling an eye and is associated with seeing and understanding. Pei comes from a symbol representing a mouth and relates to speech, expression, or communication. So the correct order of the Hebrew alphabet places understanding before speaking. Speaking without first understanding gets us into trouble. Proverbs 18:13. So, even though Jeremiah gets the alphabet right as he starts out, in the midst of his intense grief, he evidently loses focus, putting speaking before understanding. Perhaps he's saying it's easier to start out in suffering without claiming injustice. Job 1:8, chapter 2, verse 10. But extended durations of unspeakable horror test what we think we know about God to the core. As we lose trust in God, as our earthly expectations of his protection and love are dashed, we begin to doubt God and put our complaining ahead of our understanding. Chapter 19, verse 7. Yet in the end, regardless what we've been through, what will God himself have to say about it? Job 38, 1 and 2. In the midst of Lamentations, Jeremiah finally does remind us of God's ultimate mercy and faithfulness in chapter 3, verse 23. He's evidently refocusing on God in the midst of suffering, encouraging us to turn to God in our pain, verse 40. But he still gets the letter sequence incorrect in chapter 4. In chapter 5, he doesn't even try poetry. It's just words. Similarly, in the midst of intense misery and pain, the psalmist is troubled at the very thought of God. He's absolutely overwhelmed. Psalm 77:3. Speechless, verse 4. Though he tries meditating on the works of God to reconcile them with his calamity, verses 5 and 6, he just can't shake the cruelty and injustice of it all, verses 7 to 9. Though he tries meditating on the works of God to reconcile them with his calamity, verses 5 and 6, he just can't shake the cruelty and injustice of it all, verses 7 through 9. When he finds he is unable to make sense of his suffering on his own, he concludes it must be his own fault. His lack of understanding amounts to a personal infirmity. He just can't see things from God's perspective. Verse 10a. In faith, despite what he sees and feels, he continues meditating on how God reveals himself and encourages himself in God. Verses 10b through 13. This doesn't make his pain go away, but at least he can suffer in a little dignity and honor rather than in bitterness and despair. Job 19:25. Suffering can be bewilderingly debilitating, but defying God in the midst of it doesn't improve our situation. Psalm 27:13. The key is to keep our eyes on God. Trust he knows what he's doing, Psalm 27:14, and expect him to keep his word, Psalm 18:30, to the very end, Job 13:15. This is easier said than done. We can't do this all on our own. Yet Jesus is able to suffer perfectly, Hebrews 12:3. He can suffer in and through us, 2 Corinthians 4:10, giving us grace, Hebrews 4:16, to overcome, John 16:33. He is able to keep us from falling and to present us faultless before God with joy, Jude 24. In heaven, we won't be complaining about God allowing evil and suffering, even our own. We will have his perspective, that it's all about him, and worship him in glory. Revelation 4:11.